pass go and do not collect $200. This is a classic mistake because bigger roads do work, just only for a minute. As roads improve, more people drive until it's just as busy as it was before. Bigger roads, more traffic, same congestion. Remember, transportation is an ecosystem. You can pull any lever you want and with the best intentions, but change one variable and 3 dominoes down the line, who knows what happens. Trust me, I watch levers get pulled all the time. Plus, money spent on roads isn't spent improving trains, bikes, and buses. So why do roads get bigger anyway? In part because politicians serve short terms, reduce commute time, get reelected, and then watch it return to normal. Roads determine the shape, health, and size. They push buildings further apart and housing into suburbs. These long distances between home and work or school or shopping encourage and often require the use of a car. What could be an easily walked or biked community is stretched out into an endless sea of buildings where people get less exercise, make fewer friends, even spend less money. But for 92% of their life, cars just sit. In the US alone, there are 1 billion parking spaces, 4 times the number of cars, or together the size of Connecticut. Most cities have parking minimums. For example, a bowling alley in San Jose, California must provide at least 7 parking spaces per bowling lane. A business office requires 1 for every 250 square feet, but a research office only 300, which is just as arbitrary as it sounds. In 2004, the City of London removed these minimums and parking fell from 1.1 spaces per apartment to 0.6. And since businesses are incentivized to create as much parking as customers need, this switch from free to free market parking shows there was previously too much. Of course, parking is never really free. In residential areas, it hides in the cost of rent. In the US, that's an average of $225 a month, sometimes much more. And taxpayers bear the cost of free public parking whether they use it every day or can't afford a car and only breathe in their fumes. Worse, Americans incentivize driving with a federal commuter tax benefit, $7.3 billion a year in write-offs for those who drive to work. This alone causes an estimated 4.6 billion more miles to be driven and moves wealth from poor to rich. Meanwhile, the government loses $7 billion, which I have a feeling it could find a better use for. Now, you might be thinking, all this talk of parking and sprawl and roads, it assumes more cars in the future, but when we share them, won't there actually be fewer? Well, maybe, but there's good reason to be skeptical. For every mile shared Uber and Lyft rides save, they add 2.6. How is that possible? 45% of the time, they're empty, driving to and from pickups, and 60% of riders say they would have otherwise walked or biked or stayed home. Driverless cars will be more efficient, but not fundamentally different. There will be empty, wasted miles, and many who share will do so instead of a more efficient means of transportation. And because demand fluctuates, they'll still need parking. Having enough cars to get everyone to and from work leaves many with nothing to do for the rest of the day. They could go park outside the city, but that means more miles driven. Plus, they all need somewhere for recharging, cleaning, and maintenance. Now, here's the thing. It's easy to imagine a future where automation is so efficient, none of this really matters. For example, this study estimates a 25 to 35% increase in traffic flow, which is very encouraging. Here's the catch. Only when nearly every vehicle is self-driving. Eventually, cars will no longer have the monkey coordination problem, where one car can slow down a city. But that's the key. It only takes a single non-self-driving car. Even with 75% driverless, the study says the improvements are minor. So someday they may solve the transportation problem, but first they could make it much worse. The most efficient way to travel isn't the car or train or plane, it's your feet. Minimal infrastructure and a very small, well, footprint. Almost as good are bicycles and skateboards. Of course, these alone are not enough, so transportation is a balance. It's not bus versus rail versus car, but all of the above. When twice a day, 5 days a week, thousands of people need to get from roughly here to roughly here, although you're probably looking for rapid transit. Within the city, where routes and demand change over time, the bus is probably your answer. But self-driving cars threaten this balance. The first to adopt them will be those that can afford it. And as more and more upper and middle class disappear from public transit, so will its funding disappear. To them, public transit will seem old and unnecessary, but it'll still be very important for much of the population. If cities want to keep an efficient balance, they need to prioritize accordingly, designing first for walking and biking, open spaces, clean sidewalks, and instead of fighting the homeless, well, maybe fighting homelessness. After that, encouraging public transit, the most efficient, cost-effective way to move huge groups of people. And finally, controlling the number of cars, making sure drivers themselves pay their costs, including those you can't see. The price of tolls and parking should increase with demand, creating an incentive not to drive, and managing congestion during peak hours. None of this will be easy, but ultimately transportation is an equation. The difference between an overcrowded city and a comfortable one is finding the optimal mathematical solution. Cities have to find the right balance of old technologies and new ones, like dockless, electric scooters, bike sharing, even segways. Earlier in this video, we talked about transportation incentives. That topic deserves more attention, and is the subject of a new video on the YouTube channel City Beautiful. I highly recommend checking out all his videos. He does a really great job explaining city-related topics in an entertaining way, and there's nothing quite like it on YouTube. Link is in the description, and thanks for listening.